Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got big news regarding Greenland. They've been having some protests fueled by EU liberal propaganda against the United States and President Trump. Donald Trump trying to save and protect Greenland, and it's very noble, and he's been so sweet and so nice. And to see this and what the EU's done, it's really disgusting. So take a look at this. Greenland political parties joined together against Trump and his comments about annexing the island. They say, well, no, we want to be independent. Well, you really cannot exist independently based off of the money that Denmark gives you. And the United States can offer you certainly a better deal. Now you've got these people in the EU saying they're not going to want to lose their EU passport and all this stuff. When in reality, you look at the position of Greenland, it's more of a North American territory. Certainly more of a North American territory than it is EU. It's just influenced by the EU because of its relation to Denmark. You've got all those other countries. They all want to stick together. They all dislike Trump. There's a very clear dynamic happening right now with these EU countries. They realize that Donald Trump is pro-America. He is not beholden to Europe and whatever happens in Eastern Europe. That's why he's trying to end this war, even if it means giving up land to the Russians. He just wants it over because he's like, well, if we get a more explosive war, especially with where we're at right now in NATO, it's Article 5, and then we're screwed, and we get into a world war, and that's a whole big thing, and we hope nukes aren't used, and we don't want that to happen. So Trump has a different approach when it comes to Europe in general. There's a lot of animosity. These countries don't like it. But he said back in 2018, 2019, it's very important that we get Greenland. It was kind of a joke. Denmark was like, no, we're not doing it. They treated him terribly. They laughed at him, just like the Germans. Remember when Trump talked about Germany relying on Russia, and then it actually happens for their oil, and Russia gets into the war. These EU countries, they just keep stepping on themselves, and this is another situation with Denmark. They should have sold Greenland to the United States back in 2019. They've lost all of their leverage, and now the poor people of Greenland are being pumped with this anti-Trump, horrible European Union propaganda. Let's take a look at what this article says. The 5 parties in Greenland's parliament issued a joint statement on Friday rejecting Donald Trump's latest effort to take control of the strategic Arctic island. The statement was issued by the leaders of the 5 parties that won seats in parliament in an election held earlier in the week. The statement was, quote, "We, the party chairman, cannot accept the repeated statements on annexation and control of Greenland." And remember, you take a look at what Trump says. I mean, Trump says right here, he's agreeing and he's admitting, yes, we're going to be annexing Greenland. It has to happen. It's important. Whether or not the Canada stuff, I mean, listen, when you look at this thing, most people in the United States agree Greenland is it's necessary, and it doesn't change the fabric of the United States. It becomes a territory. Maybe it ends up developing into a state. That's fine. They can have 3 electoral votes, whatever. They're not going to be a state at the beginning, though, because they don't have the population. Even if they did have the population, it just doesn't make sense right now to make them a state. But Greenland is a much more realistic, understandable endeavor for a territorial expansion for the United States. And again, we're talking about a territory here. Does anyone really look at Puerto Rico? Are they really relevant in our American politics? They're not. So you bring them on as a territory. It's not this crazy thing like globalism. Now, Canada, but even Canada, that's just North America. In Canada, it'd be a little bit different. It'd be certain provinces. I think Trump would want the western side of Canada, but he's saying all of Canada. But that's another story for another day. Trump here is saying we need Greenland. It's security. We have to have stable footing. And even NATO now, some of the top people in NATO are saying, yeah, it might be good for the United States to have protections over Greenland with the amount of movement in the Arctic that China has, that Russia has, the footholds. The United States needs to have stability in the Arctic for the foreseeable future, with the Arctic becoming more valuable within the Northwest Passage and Nunavut and Greenland and all of it. And so Trump realizes it, and you even to some of these liberal people are like, we admit we don't like Trump, but this is a great idea because it's going to be valuable, and there's going to have to be something that happens, and there's going to be this weird entanglement with the European Union, and it's going to be all this thing. We don't want that. We don't want the European Union involved in Greenland. Okay, right now they are because of Denmark indirectly, and that's where they're getting all their information and all their propaganda that Trump's this big bad person. And you also do have the idea, very similar to Canada, where the politics on Greenland are not conservative. They would be more liberal. Now, it doesn't matter. There's 57,000 people. It's not like it would change anything in the United States if they got added. But just in general, when you've got someone like Trump, who's seen as this, especially for Europe and for those countries, very right-wing. Because they look at the right-wing parties in Europe, they're like, maybe we shouldn't have all this immigration. And they're like, oh, racist, you're terrible. You don't want more immigration? Oh, you're racist. That's how bad it is. It's like, if you say anything about immigration, you're automatically, they label you a Nazi. It's really, really sad. So you can't even do that. That's why a lot of those parties, like, they can't even exist. They, like, ban the parties. So listen, when it comes to this, here's Trump he's like, I have to admit, we have to take Greenland. We're going to have to annex it. There's probably not, because the thing is we thought there would be maybe some type of economic agreement. The problem is we don't want Greenland doing an economic agreement with the EU. And I would presume, unless they somehow produce some type of windfall themselves independently, they get money. It's 25% of their GDP from subsidies from Denmark. So where is that money coming from? Are you just not going to have it anymore? They're already dealing with infrastructure problems. They're dealing with lack of high quality jobs that the United States could help them with. And they're like, well, what about our access to universal health care? I mean, the United States could easily pay for that and more based off of the fact that there's only 57,000 people living there. This is not a hard ask for the United States. Now, listen, we're not really in the business of spending a ton of money right now with our debt and our deficit, but I don't think it would be a huge commitment in terms of Greenland. And you talk to anyone, and it's really a long-term thing for Trump. It's a long-term strategical play for Trump's legacy is to get Greenland. It's not like it's going to immediately save the United States $5 trillion in rare earths. I mean, that's a long, multiple decade process when it comes to extracting the rare earths and getting something for them. But it will inevitably, if they do acquire Greenland, and we don't even know what's under the glaciers, if those end up at least melting on the outsides of them along the coasts, you're talking about trillions of dollars in profit in this acquisition. And that's just that's just based off of the natural resources, the rare earths, the minerals, everything that's in Greenland. That's not even just the territory and the Arctic control that we would get, which would be invaluable. It's a priceless acquisition if we get it. It's priceless. The problem is, and I said this last week, no matter what happened with the election, these people do not want to join the United States. They haven't heard our offer. They have not heard our offer. Realistically, if this was like 1910, we would just send a military in there and we would annex the country. I mean, that's just how it would be done. But you have World War I, you have World War II doing something like that. I mean, honestly, it's like if there was ever a time to do it, I mean, it's like with Greenland, just because the way it's situated is so crazy, they can't even claim, oh, they're a sovereign nation. No, they're controlled by Denmark, lightly controlled. They have a lot of independence, I'll agree, but they can't even have a military because of Denmark. So it's this weird thing to where this is the one thing that Trump can do that I don't think people can really have a crazy issue with. It's not like you're going to fight them or anything like that. And even NATO now has come out and said, well, the United States can do what they want. We're not going to disavow Trump possibly annexing NATO. That's what the chief of NATO said. He said, I'm going to let the United States deal with Greenland. We know Greenland's very important. And he basically said, while not really saying it, if you can read between the lines, by saying that that area and that land is important, there's either going to have to be EU intervention or US intervention or a combination. Because it's not like Greenland is going to be able to get a stable footing in the shipping lanes like the United States or the EU could with our investments and the money that we have. It would be the United States or a country in Europe or the European Union doing some type of deal with Greenland to set up something to be able to have influence over the Arctic. NATO knows, the European countries in NATO know that has to happen, but Trump wants to beat them to the punch. See, if we had a liberal in office for the next 20 years, it would just be an EU cesspool. Greenland would have some type of economic deal with the EU. There'd be Brits up in Greenland. They would infesting the shipping lanes. We want the United States to control all of that. Okay, and to do it, or it would be like some deal with the United States and the EU together. We want to cut them out. We don't agree with them. We don't agree with them silencing people for emojis. We don't agree with them. Now you've got things happening with some of these countries in Europe to where they're just banning parties and saying, oh, it's because of TikTok. We don't like your party. You're too right-wing. We're just going to ban you and then make up a reason and say it's because of TikTok manipulation. This is not what we support. We don't support this type of stuff. We're not liberal. The United States, we're a conservative country. We're very conservative. And we're going further to the right. So we don't support the liberalism happening in Europe. And listen, they're changing a little bit. This is what JD Vance said. They're changing a little bit. We'll see if they move. I mean, at some point, they're going to have to. They see all this immigration. It's just not healthy for their culture. They understand it. We'll see if it works. What JD Vance said. He said they're destroying themselves over a long period of time. And so, I mean, here's Trump saying it's going to happen. They're having these like, the people of Greenland are going out. They're protesting. They're saying, no, we don't want it. This is EU manipulation. It's not good. And it's not healthy. And we want to be able to talk to the people of Greenland and really lay it out and say, you can keep your health care. We're going to give you more benefits. We're going to give you better jobs, better infrastructure. We're going to make this to where it's a better scenario for you guys. And we're going to invest serious money into the area way more than Denmark ever could. So this undoubtedly will be a better situation for Greenland. And it's a territory which is very advantageous in terms of taxes. There's no federal taxes. So there's a lot to this. And the reason we would do this and really play nice is because Greenland is so important and it's such a unique territory. I mean, country right now, but it'd be a U.S. territory to where it's this big land area, but there's nobody living on it. And it's becoming more and more important as you get the climate shift. And so this is something to where, listen, if we're able to get it, Trump said it's going to happen. He wants it to happen. He wants it to happen under his watch, but we're dealing with a little bit of a delay from Greenland in terms of this is the number one thing. You want to be independent from Denmark. Okay, well, Denmark helps keep your economy afloat. So where's that money come from? Does it come from an EU deal? We don't want that. It can come from the United States, and that's the facilitation of possibly some type of deal with both Greenland and Denmark. If we're able to get Denmark out of the way, Greenland's going to say, well, listen, we want to be independent, but we have to have some type of deal with someone. And so that's where the whole idea of, well, do we do an economic relationship with them to where they're still technically an independent country, but we can extract minerals and protect them and set up more military bases and have control of the Arctic? Or is it just to where Trump's like, no, if we're going to invest this money into this country, they need to be a U.S. territory? So there's a number of different factors at play when it comes to this. This is what these countries do. They're going to want this whole independence thing, and we want to be empowered. But it's not like they can just say, well, we're going to shed Denmark and we'll be fine. You're going to need, if you want to have a good quality of life and improved situation, you're going to need more than Denmark. But if you lose Denmark, it's going to be very hard because they're going to lose money that they were previously getting because Denmark gave them money. And Denmark is sitting there like, I mean, Denmark really can't say anything because Greenland has come out and said, we want to be independent from Denmark. They don't want anything to do with Denmark. But for them, it's understanding, okay, if we do want to be independent from Denmark, how are we going to stay afloat as a country with how isolated we are? That's where it becomes a problem. And this is something to where people are like, well, what about China and Russia? It would never happen. Look at the geography on where Greenland is located. It's in between the United States and Europe. And more specifically, Canada and Europe. But there's no way that any of the NATO countries, any of the European countries would allow China or Russia to territorial claim Greenland. They would much rather the United States do it. And so, listen, this is something that's going to be a big, big thing in the future. And Trump is saying, well, let's get control of it right now because it's going to be huge. And the people of Greenland, I said, they're not going to like it. They're not going to, but we haven't even offered our deal to them. We haven't offered a deal. Just let us offer a deal to Greenland. And this is a nice thing because if it was 1910, there would be a military exercise and it would just be taken over. And we wouldn't have to give up anything. But I mean, we're already going to have to give up stuff because we have to up the infrastructure in Greenland. No matter what, if we take control of the territory. But the question is how is Trump going to do this with all of this, what I call modern day posturing, to where it's like, well, how dare you? You won't do this because if you do it, it's going to be very bad. And any type of aggression in the 21st century is seen as an extremely negative thing. So that's why these smaller countries have the bravado of, you're not going to do anything. How dare you even say that? You can't talk about annexation. But I mean, the question is, well, we need to get this moving at some point. So we'll do negotiations if you want. If you don't want to do negotiations, we might have to escalate it further. I don't think it would be a good look if there was a military exercise in Greenland for Trump. I don't. Now, for me, and for a lot of people, we like, for us, this is stuff that we understand this is necessary, but the liberal media would have a field day about it. Military escalation. It's really not military escalation. They don't have a military. Greenland doesn't have a military. The only way Greenland gets protected is from European NATO countries sending their military to defend Greenland, I guess, against the United States. That's the only way Greenland would be protected. But we're not going into to do anything in terms of threaten. It would just be a peaceful takeover. It would be a peaceful territorial acquisition. But it's more like a military routine. It's like a military practice in Greenland, basically. And look, it's not going to look good on the headlines, but it really doesn't matter, because I think people realize we have to educate people on how important Greenland is for the United States and for the future. And those people, they're going to get so many benefits from us. I mean, we are by far the biggest military in the world. That's full protection. Not that Greenland is very threatened based on their location and their climate. I'll agree with you, they're not threatened a ton, but still, you're talking about no military. You're defended by who? Denmark? Really? I mean, look at what happened with World War II. Imagine another scenario like that. We owned Greenland from 41 to 45 when Denmark was occupied by Nazi Germany. That's why we have a military base in northern Greenland. Think about that for a second. That's what Trump was referencing. And then Trump said, well, a boat came up in like 200 years ago. He's like, I don't even, I mean, that's really what happened with Denmark, and that's why they claimed it. So it's like, really? Denmark, this country is going to claim this with their economy? This is not right. This is not good. And we've been really nice to Denmark, and they've, it's not these European countries. Where does this arrogance come from? Trump is such a sweet man. He's such a peaceful individual. He's done so much for the world. People are like, yes, he's going to win the Nobel Peace Prize. It's historic. And to see these countries in Europe treating Trump like this, it's so sad, and just, it's not necessary. And where is the arrogance and in this attitude, and Zelensky in the White House? And it's all totally unnecessary when Trump's trying to end these wars and really just secure this island for these people and give them even more resources. And we're going to be mining resources, and they're going to get a cut of that. Like a 1%. But it's like, the relationship with the United States and Europe with a Republican in office, it's always going to be tumultuous, because we're conservative, you're very liberal. We have different values. Those European countries are very liberal, we're conservative. The United States is a very, very conservative country. We're going further to the right. So there's going to be this little headbutting between Trump and these European leaders. It's like, wow, you're actually not going to support Europe and defend Europe. Well, listen, we will treat every situation with how it benefits the United States outside of Israel. But listen, I'll say about this, I think Greenland, it's got to happen. Trump says it's going to happen. He's willing it into existence. There's going to be this bravado, this arrogance. You can't do this. How dare you? It's pearl clutching. Smaller countries do the pearl clutching, but it's not even like Denmark can do anything. Greenland wants to leave Denmark. They just have to get their ducks in a row, basically, in terms of how they can feasibly do it and still have an economy that's above water. Because they do take money from it. Because I think if Denmark didn't give them anything, they would already have left. They do not want to be a part of Denmark. It's this move to being independent. But this is where it like ruffles feathers, and we got to get them under us. And is it going to be an economic partnership? Are they going to look at the EU? We'll have to see. But they're like, well, because of NATO and all this stuff. Well, the United States might leave NATO anyways. I really don't think Trump wants to be in NATO at this point. I mean, there are pros and cons to it. But there's just such a difference in belief system between these European countries and the United States at this point. And that's an agreement. That's a defense pact signed in like 1950. I mean, right after World War II. Height of Soviet power in Eastern Europe. It's all gone. Then they're like, oh, it's reformed. Oh no, you're right. They annexed Crimea. They annexed the peninsula. They annexed 1/6 of Ukraine. Yeah, they've totally reformed the Soviet Union. And what did they invest to even do all of that? It's not feasible for Russia to reform that. It's just not. They don't have the army. They don't have the power to do it. They don't have the economic power to do it. I mean, they could try and influence the eastern former Soviet states, but an invasion? It's very unlikely, especially if those European countries do go through a rearmament and up their defense spending, which they said they were going to do, which is good, which is what we wanted. But yeah, I mean, these are big comments on Greenland, and listen, this is one of those things like it's the easy way or the hard way. Let's just diplomatically agree to this. Well, but it's like you have to get this. The ball has to start getting rolling. You have to give them a proposal to be able to make it worth their while in terms of an investment into Greenland is what I'm talking about. And the people saying, well, can you just bribe the citizens of Greenland? I mean, you would give the money to the government, and then the government would distribute the money to the citizens. Yes, that's legal. It is legal. It's a deal with the government, and they distribute the money. I'm not saying we should do that, but that's something. I mean, if there's only 57,000, you could do that and say we'll give you like 50K, 100K, whatever it ends up at, whatever it is. And they're like, well, what about our healthcare and stuff? It's all covered. We can cover all of that. I mean, this is 57,000 people we're talking about. It's no one. We can get these people structured in a better scenario for them. But listen, we'll see if this ends up happening. They want to be independent, but they have to have some type of military, or they have to have some type of agreement. They don't have a military. Now, I guess if they did become independent, they would be allowed to have a military, but it'd be extremely weak because there's a very small population. But either way, guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.